Dave, to millions of people, you are one of the greatest car designers that has ever lived.
Come on, guys.
Star of Bitchin Rides and owner of Kindig-It Design.
Cars are bitchin' rides.
I'm just a lucky stiff that loved cars so much and never gave up.
It's time to get this car out on the road.
When I was a kid, and my mom says, you can't make those, but your second love, cars, you can do those. Quit my job after 8.5 years and started a business out of my garage. We had a couple of clients that want to invest some money. About 4 months into it, came in, had us escorted off the property, was going to take over the business. And I remember Charity and I were just bawling. We're going to lose everything. That was a tough lesson.
Dave, to millions of people, you are one of the greatest car designers that has ever lived. Star of Bitchin Rides and owner of Kindig-It Design. But in your own words, though, who are you and what do you do?
I'm just a lucky stiff that loved cars so much and never gave up on them, I guess.
Where does that come from then? If you had to pinpoint for me on the spot a moment in your earliest years that without it, you wouldn't be sat here, you wouldn't be over here at Petrol Hedonism for the show, and you wouldn't have done everything to this point, that pivotal moment that pointed you in this direction, what would it be?
Oh, you know, that's so hard to pinpoint because there's so many things I think that make you crazy about one little thing, an item, an idea, and a lifestyle. And I think all of those things had to come together. So I think maybe the pivotal point was probably, I don't know if it'd be my mom or meeting my wife, my father-in-law. I mean, there were so many people that had given me so much inspiration and you know, the thought that I could succeed in doing something. I'm a product of what if. So I think that it's really difficult for me to pinpoint. I'd probably just go back to the beginning. I loved to design insects when I was a kid. And my mom says, you can't make those, but your second love, cars, you can do those. And so I just started drawing and playing with Hot Wheels and Legos. And I mean, I just kind of followed that all the way through. I've just always been kind of crazy about cars.
But it's those things like drawing from an early age, like really enjoying doing something, because typically when we're forced into something, we go into the complete other direction. But if you take on something that you love for whatever reason, because it relaxes you, because it excites you, typically that makes us so more passionate about that thing. And we never think when you're younger drawing bugs that could be such a fundamental part of your story.
Right.
So many years later. When you were that kid drawing those bugs, tell me about yourself, because on camera and when you're in the show, you're so extroverted, so full of energy, and then also so precise and clear at different points. But was that you as a kid, or have you developed into that person?
You know, I think it's something you develop because, you know, when I was the Lone Ranger just drawing cars or whatever, that was all, I was the only one that had to please. And, you know, being in business doing that, you don't have to please the customer that's paying for the vehicle. And I also have to impress and inspire the guys that are actually building the vehicle out in the shop, you know, keeping them involved and keeping them interested. So I think that, you know, it's from all aspects and all of the things that I've done, you know, in the last 54 years of being alive and 26 years in business. It's just, I think that all of those things have kind of coagulated up to create where I'm kind of the nucleus, and all of the things moving around me are all moving in series with the direction I want to go. And I think that the benefit really comes down to the client when they get their car. They see that all of that love, everybody that's touched that car has been because there's one driving force, but it's not just one person's art. It's everybody's.
Is that
you know?
Your favorite bit as well, though, the reaction, the handover?
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, in reality TV, all of that stuff goes so well. You know, but really, you know, if you've watched Bitchin Rides, when we give the car back to somebody, much like when Chip would give somebody back their car from, you know, overhauling, it's not necessarily done. We always say that a car that we build is 85% done when we hand it off in the show. But realistically, driving the car, shaking it down, you know, we want to make a car what I call valet proof before we hand it back to somebody. And so when we would do the reveals and stuff, I mean, it was very simple, it was cute, and, you know, and it's fun, and you get to see the end of the story, because at some point the story has to end so we can move on to the next car. But those cars would actually, you know, stick around. We usually put 250, 350 miles on a car before we hand it back to a customer, especially if they want to drive it. You know, if something's going to come loose or squeak or whatever, we want it to do it to us so that we can give it back to them perfect.
I've heard you say before your favorite car is always the next car.
Correct.
But should we actually take it right back to the first to like show where you came from? Because like you said, your mother was the one that pointed you in the direction and maybe you could do cars.
Sure.
But what was your into that? What did your life look like at that point around cars?
You know, I mean, that point in my life with cars was literally more toys and drawing. I didn't grow up with a dad around. Didn't grow up with an older brother building cars out in the garage or a sister for that matter. And you know, it was just something I was into. We grew up very poor. And I remember hunting golf balls to buy bicycle parts for my BMX bike to keep up with my friends that all had really cool bikes. You know, this is back in the 80s. I mean, I am from the 1900s, you know. But yeah, you know, just very humble beginnings. And I think that I always watched to see, you know, how do people get to where they're at and what makes them so special? How did they get there? And how do I get the staircase to go up to that level? And there is no magic sauce to it. There's hard work, there's dreaming, there's never forgetting where you want to be, and always setting goals higher, because when you've reached that first goal, you need to have other goals. And so I just, you know, I kept throwing it all back in and just kept going, okay, that was really cool. Let's see if we can do it better the next time. And it's just kind of been my life, you know. Volkswagen Beetle was one of my first cars, and customizing it was always, what can I do out in the driveway to make it cool? Because I didn't have any money. You know, I remember lowering it. Everybody was buying lowered beams for the front of for an early Beetle. And I'm out there pulling leaf springs, basically the torsion bars out of the front beam to drop the car, turn in the torsion bars in the back, and it looked cool. Couldn't afford wheels, but that's okay. Car still had a good stance. So I just, you know, and the harder I worked, the more I wanted to experience things and do things. And pretty soon I got to where I was going. Had some pretty cool cars that started to stand out, and people wanted to have me work on their stuff.
Me and Dave have been at the Petrol Hedonism live show this weekend, which has been utterly insane. Such a good event, hosted by Chiro Champion. That is just one of many events that you can head to all across the UK too. And Chiro has even broken into the US with some of his events too. So make sure you head down and click the link, check out Petrol Hedonism and all of the events that you can attend in the remainder of this year and the beginning of next year too. I'm sure we'll see you there in the future. You said though that you were keen to look at kind of others people's journeys, other road to successes, which is exactly like I do. And I'm obsessed with the story of people. And the reason being that I'm obsessed so much is typically what the masses outlook of someone that starts a business, or the moment they start, or what that person looks like when they start something, is often so different to the actual reality. Now, people talk about the most important people in your life. And to you, I've seen you talk about your partner before, and she was such a fundamental part of you making the decision to start your business. So do you want to just tell us a bit about the recipe that concluded in you doing that?
Well, the recipe for Charity and I was me convincing her that I felt that I could make better money for our family, and that by going on my own. Little history on my work is, you know, I was kind of into clothing sales and stuff at the first, you know, when I was making a lot of money even before I had a driver's license, working out of the mall, selling shoes at Tom McCann's shoe store in downtown Salt Lake City. And fast forward, went to another clothing store. It was a little bit more exclusive and cool. And got a couple warehouse jobs, and then pretty soon ended up at High Performance Coatings. Charity and I had met. We'd been married and talking about having kids and stuff. And HPC basically was doing a lot of ceramic coatings on exhaust systems, pistons, valve springs, that kind of stuff for Top Fuel, street rods, muscle cars, that kind of stuff. And so I was already kind of getting into the automotive industry, at least my foot into the door, which was only the exhaust systems. But got to meet a lot of people. I met Chip Foose back when he worked for Boyd Coddington, Bobby Alloway, some of the greatest builders. Troy Chapanier, great builder, somebody I always admired and watched, and Ken Fennicle at Posey's. I mean, there was just so many people back in that day building street rods, and that was kind of the thing. And that was really something that was like, wow, I really like the vibe here. I like customizing cars, old ones, muscle cars, whatever, whatever. And always had kind of that in my mind that that's what I wanted to do. Drawing cars, that's where I kind of got discovered when I was working at HPC. Charity and I were very poor, as we were, sweating a $235 a month apartment payment. And when we first moved in together after we were married, and we would rent a couple of movies for the weekend or whatever, and I would have a sketch pad, and I literally would just sit there and draw cars and color them while we were watching movies over a weekend, and I'd end up hanging them in my office at HPC. And the Rod and Custom AmeriCruise had come through back in like 94, 95, 96, somewhere in there. And, I had a lot of friends that were in that space that I had made over the 8.5 years-ish. And one of the guys was Ed Capon that worked at Arizona Speed Marine, which fast forward ended up being the right-hand man to Gary Metters for Good Guys Rod and Custom. And Ed says, "Hey, who does those drawings?" I said, "I do. It's just a hobby." He goes, "Those aren't bad." He says, "You ever thought about doing those for magazines?" I said, "Man, I'd love to." And it wasn't very much longer that I ended up getting a chance to do something for Super Chevy and Chevy High Performance for a 69 Camaro that he had commissioned me to do. Fast forward, I did a couple others, and then all of a sudden I was designing the 99 Chevy Silverado for Arizona Speed Marine, the ASM SS edition. It had trends billets. I mean, you got to remember, this is back in, the mid to late 90s. And it had Budnick wheels, Wings West body kits, the Trends grill billet stuff, and all of the Arizona Speed Marine performance stuff. And they gave me an opportunity that was in Super Chevy and Chevy High Performance. And I was just like, or in a trucking magazine as well. And pretty soon, everybody outside of Utah thought I was a big deal designer in Utah and vice versa. And I finally convinced my wife. I was like, look, I can draw a car in the kitchen in one evening and make as much money as I'm making in 40 to 60 hours on salary at HPC.
Which are quite like life-defining moments on that journey, isn't it? Because it almost unlocks another door that you didn't think was there.
Right. And that's the thing is I finally had convinced her because we now had Bailey, my daughter, and we were getting ready to have our second child. And she goes, "All right, here's the deal. You can quit your job. We'll cash in the 401k, which was a whopping $4,800 after 8.5 years." And she says, "As long as the insurance pays for Drew's birth, we're good. Just let's go ahead and quit." Because I had a line of like renderings and I was selling some parts on the side, doing graphics that I'd taught myself how to do in the garage that I'd built. And everything ended up working out that way. Drew was born. Everything was paid for. I cashed in my 401k, quit my job after 8.5 years. And started a business out of my garage with 2 babies, 2 car payments and a house payment and no insurance.
Did you always know you were going to start that business and make that decision though?
No, I think I always kind of pushed for it. I dreamed about it, but those things are something that when you have the right person in your life that you're sharing it with, you got to make sure you're not leaving their cheese out in the wind.
5 years prior to that, would you have still believed that you could have done it in yourself?
No way.
So
probably not.
I would have
dreamed
doors
it
opening that made you more confident. More confident.
Yeah, I think really when I built a couple of my vehicles, there was there was a time where people started watching what I was doing. I was just doing stuff out of my garage. I'd bought a 91 Oldsmobile custom cruiser, one of those great big station wagons that were really popular. Moon Eyes was building some stuff for
it. Doing those in like reds and creams, like the split colors, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I ended up doing some really whacked out paint job that was kind of based off of a Tom Taylor design for a truck they called Stinky that was on Hot Rod Magazine's cover. It's a good friend of mine, Jason Vrains, A1 Truck Parts, had done. And long story short, the car just stood out. Pretty soon, people are kind of knocking on my door when I was still working at HBC and wanting me to work on, do a graphic on their car or do a design or sell them some parts or lower it or whatever. And, pretty soon, it was just crazy. It just snowballed. I was so busy, I couldn't go to work. I mean, I still did, but, it was like, hey, this could be something. And I really just said, you know what? I'm going to put it all in and let's just go. And if it doesn't work, then I'll stop upsetting my wife by saying I want to quit my job.
Let's talk about the word vision then. Your life has been about vision. Everything that you design is because of vision, because of what you see it becoming. So what was your vision of even just starting out in the garage and all that coming together? What was your vision for like the next 10 years, where you were going to go?
Well, I always thought, what if I doubled my square footage? What if I had more people that were working for me? What if I did more aspects of the build? Because really, when I first started out, I was lowering cars, selling parts, doing graphics, a little bit of paint and body work. And, that's kind of where I was at. The more cars that I got in, the bigger projects, the more ideas that I had, the more I needed to have better skills. I never went to school for any of this stuff. I didn't have, a big, long journey of welding and growing up doing that stuff. It was something I had to
and also the
to
back
learn.
end of the business, because like I joke that in your Instagram bio, I think it says something like taxpayer at Kindig-It the Rides.
The tax liability is what I am.
Yeah, the tax liability.
Yeah, and so those things really kind of just have to come in, natural. Charity's a whiz at the numbers and that kind of stuff, and she does a great job running the books. and making sure that we have somewhere to land. That's kind of the thing between Charity and I is we've been together for 35 years this year and married for 33 of them, one day off of the two. And, she's always been kind of that, the grounding. I'm the go, go, go. She's the whoa, whoa, whoa. You can jump. Let's just make sure you got somewhere to land. Right. And then she'd follow the lead of what I'm doing, but she'd also give me the back kind of the background. Hey, from the outside looking in your mind, you think you're going to go here. Let's be cautious that we don't land here or fall off the ladder. Right. And so just, her and I have been just a powerhouse of communication back and forth and making sure that we're both on the same page, the direction we're going to go. And, let's go live the what if. Hey, and make sure you subscribe to Road to Success.
The problem is along every entrepreneur's journeys is they have moments that at the time they feel like this is the end of the world. Like it's all coming down on you. And for you, I heard you speak about like taking on initial investors, right, in your company. Yeah. Like you can only plan and only land so many times from your own planning without getting something wrong. Was that the first time that you think there was a huge lesson along your journey?
I think you never know how well you've done until you find out how bad you can land. My wife and I, we had a couple of clients that had decided that, hey man, you're doing this car for us. We really like your program. We want to invest some money. We're like, oh, okay, cool. We don't know. We didn't go to school for business management, any of that kind of stuff. It was something that we basically were, school of hard knocks. You got to figure it out. And that couple had given us about $120,000 and invested in the company. The lady that we were working with was the one that was doing all the books. So, we didn't really know everything about what they were doing. And
were they very hands-on?
No, they weren't. So they would work in the office. They'd give me ideas, They
were in the business though.
Yeah. No, they weren't. They were car collectors.
Okay.
Yeah. But they were into, doing books and that kind of stuff. They were accountants and the other guy was disabled from something. So I think he had gotten a bunch of money from a settlement or whatever. And so long story short, they had got involved with us. And about 4 months into it, they seen that we already had kind of a calling. We already had the footprint, 9,000 square feet that we were in. And I think they had it all the time to take over the business and push us out. And one day we was going to lunch and they showed up and it wasn't awesome to see them pop in there. They had just divorced themselves rather from the business. And long story short, they came in, had us escorted off the property, was going to take over the business. In 3 days, we had the ability to go back in. We borrowed a bunch of money from Charity's dad to pay a lawyer, go in and basically force them out of the business, turn it into a simple loan. But they did basically try to steal my company and turn it into a Mopar restoration shop.
And would you,
with no investment,
ever have imagined that the people that you met and first sat down with and obviously gave you the excitement to do that could actually do that?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, when they came in, we thought that was the way that a business succeeds is you have an investor and then all of a sudden you have some money in the bank account. And realistically, what they had done is they tried to say that we had embezzled $44,000. There was never in $44,000 even in the bank account. We had bills, we were buying equipment, that kind of stuff. That's what we used the money with them for, was to grow the business. And what their intention was basically just to grow it, but in a sense, steal it.
But you won and got them out.
We won, turned it into a simple loan. They went away. They couldn't come within 500 yards of the shop, which was really cool. And so, that was a tough lesson. I remember Charity and I were just bawling. We got dropped off. Our phones were taken away. The company vehicle that we had, was taken away. And within a couple of hours, that was on a Friday.
It's
we
like
thought for sure, well, it's a weekend. They just
out.
booted us out of our business. We're going to lose everything, And getting with the lawyer that we did. He ended up knowing the judge, and there was a lot of, it's probably more stuff than everybody needs to know, but basically it just ended up being a win, but it was a very, very tough deal to go through, to think that you're going to lose it all. It was funny when we got back, everybody was still there and they were like, we couldn't believe that. I had Valerie, Will, there was a whole bunch of, Kevin was still there. There was all of my employees that you see now, a lot of them anyway. And they were laughing. They were saying, they said, why do you think people come here? Well, they come here for good work. Yeah, no, they come here for Dave's ideas. He says, and they were like just laughing at Sean and Sherry that had tried stealing the company from us. They're like, you might as well just go out of business right now, kind of a thing, that's why they come here. They come here for his ideas and his designs and stuff. You guys can't just do that. They said, we'll hire a designer from California. That's what they said. And that still is a going joke today. It's like, hey, Dave takes too much more time off. We'll just hire a designer out of California.
But to get to that point where your guys are saying that and they believe in you so much, they obviously see the vision, they see the business growing, they see and are passionate about the designs you make in terms of executing them. It's becoming a legend at that early point of the business in design. And we use this word legend to talk about lots of things in the world. People talk about the legend of the Loch Ness Monster, but then we also use it to talk about the success of individuals in their field and how good they are. They say that yourself, Chip Foose, legends of car design. But it makes us think that you've been doing it for so long. But to become a legend when you've already got so much to go means that you had to take some pretty quick steps along that first part of the journey. So like, what were some of those builds that you were doing at Kindig-It Designs which really put you on the map to begin with?
Sure. Actually we were doing a lot of stuff, for like local stereo shops, that kind of stuff. I was doing graphics and custom wheels and stuff, and they were doing big, CES styled builds to go to CES in Vegas. That was kind of a big one. There was Rocky Mountain Raceway. They had the midnight drags for trying to keep the kids from drag racing on the streets. So they would basically do it late night, Saturday or Friday nights, out at the racetrack that was local there. And I remember the dealer that owned the racetrack had asked me to build a car to represent, the tuner style, which was a big deal at that point. I mean, it still is now, but at that point, it was something that was pretty intricate. From whether you were doing a mini truck, a lot of mini trucking style was into those sport compacts, a lot of graphics, a lot of ground effects, that kind of stuff. And I was doing a ton of those. And we ended up building this vehicle, and I remember handing him a very large request for a deposit to buy parts and to go towards the labor.
How much was it?
It was like $79,000, which was a ton of money. That was the whole build. That's all I could come up with. Because at that time, I thought you had to give somebody a price to tell them how much something was going to be. Fast forward, we'll get into that. But basically, I handed him that bill, and he says, Dave, that's a lot of money. He says, can we go to lunch? And I said, sure. And Spencer Young is the gentleman that owned Young Chevrolet in Salt Lake. And he says, we're on our way to a nice little lunch place. He's going to buy me a sandwich. And he goes, so that's a pretty big request for a deposit. And I said, yeah. He says, do you make money? I said, hand over fist. I was broke as a joke, but I told him that I do make money because nobody wants to be anybody's hero. That was the smartest answer I'd ever come up with. Nobody prompted me to say that. And it just popped into my head. I was like, we make a lot of money. We do good. So I deserve to ask for that kind of money. Because if I had said, well, I got taxes I owe, and I've got a couple of paychecks that I'm behind on myself. I never missed paying any of my employees ever. But Charity and I went 4 or 5 months sometimes, almost losing our house, just trying to keep the business running. But I said, yeah, I make hand over fist. I make money. And he says, okay. And he gave me a check for the full amount. If I had told him that I had all those problems, though, he would have been like, oh, well, he's in trouble, so I could get it for less. And any smart business guy might feel that that's the right thing to do for their business. Not saying that Spencer was doing something, for
it's just the way that humans are.
It's the way that they are. He's a businessman, and I needed to be smart. I needed to be a businessman as well. And by doing that, I realized that cutting myself short or telling somebody that I might have some issues with, finances or anything like that makes them not comfortable giving a large amount of money to somebody. I wouldn't.
Yeah, because
I would be like, I don't want to be your hero.
Might do whatever.
Exactly, because all of a sudden, if I'm your hero, I know you're in trouble, and I give you all that money, and then you need more money. Now I'm your hero again. Anytime you're in trouble, you're gonna be calling me wanting money. And I just figured that was the wrong way to go. So by showing the confidence, oh no, my business is doing good. And he's like, okay. So that really was one of the big points where I was like going, okay. And also, back to the point of the couple that tried to steal our company. We were so upset with them for the longest time. But then this is the funny part that most people probably won't understand, is we then looked back and thanked them in a way, because we learned about contracts. We learned about making sure we had money in the bank account to pay the taxes. We made sure not to take, to rob Peter to pay Paul, because a lot of businesses go out of business by doing that. They get so far in debt because they went out and bought a motorcycle with a deposit instead of working on the car and earning it.
And it also makes you realize that like when Charity is saying, right, we just got to land on our feet, that it actually means something, because that is if you get it wrong. That's how bad it can actually feel.
Well, as fast as you can go blow a bunch of money on stuff you shouldn't is about as fast as you can imagine going out of business.
Yeah.
And if you do that, the best thing to do is to earn the money. Don't spend money you haven't earned yet, and make sure that you have some reserves, and make sure you've got your people taken care of, your parts taken care of, make sure that everything's taken care of. And then you see your success because you actually have something left over. You know, it didn't happen overnight by any stretch. I mean, we've worked so hard, and we've had so many learning curves and things that we would do differently, and then great successes. I remember one of the very first successes that we had was a 60 Corvette that we had built for a gentleman. I had a house up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, in America, and then also had a place over in Hawaii. And we had done this vehicle for Frank, and his son had crashed the car and put it on its side. And so I got it in. We did the insurance, got an insurance claim for it. And he decided, I think I'm gonna invest in another Ferrari and send that back out to Hawaii. He goes, if you want, he says, why don't you just buy the car from me? And I told Charity, I said, he'd sell the car. We can fix it. We're probably only going to, we're only going to be X amount in it. And we can sell the car and make some money and, put it all back into the company. She goes, yeah, let's do that. I was like, you're going to actually let me do that? It was an Art Morrison frame. It was a nice car, one-off wheels from Evod. I mean, there was just some really, really cool stuff on this car. We bought that car, fixed it. It wasn't totaled by any stretch, but it was, it had a little bit of fiberglass damage. We had to repaint most of the car. And we sold that car and made $87,000 in our bank account. We had never seen an amount of money in our life like that. We paid off every bit of our debt except for our house. And it was like, wow, this worked. And she goes, we need to do that again. And so I kept looking for other things that we would take a little bit of time, put our own work and money and efforts into. And we'd turn around and flip the car and sell it and make some more money. Paid off our house. Moved into a new building, or, we bought our building. We bought a house, but we just kept doing that over and over again, going, hey, you know what? Let's invest some money. Great one. I still hold the world record for the Volkswagen bus. At 65 black and white with red interior. I sold at Barrett Jackson. It was funny as we were building that. I bought the vehicle. It was an old kennel dog van. It had literally, it was orange and it said some kennel company for dogs. And the vehicle smelled like dog pee, So we had a soda blast. I did all the work on it. Took it to Barrett Jackson. Every time I'd cut a check or buy something for it, she's like, stop spending so much money. Don't spend so much money.
But it has to be perfect.
She goes, I was like, just trust me. And we were like, my cost was almost like $90,000. That's like hard cost. And this isn't that long ago. And so that was pretty inexpensive compared to what I typically build. But she was like, I'm draining a little bit of an account. And we go to Barrett Jackson. We pull up there. She's got a couple of her friends, and she's smoking hot. All these hot chicks are hanging out the sunroof. Kevin and I are up in the front. We pull up. We have the safaris. We're doing all the hang loose. We get out. The vibe's awesome. We stand there, and when you're on the stage at Barrett Jackson, looking into the crowd on Super Saturday, the place is packed. Right? It's about 3:00 in the afternoon, Super Saturday. And right above you, you can see the van, you can see yourselves, and also the number that the car's bid at is.
Yeah, because I can never understand the guy on the mic.
Right, I can't either. That's why he's trying to. I'm going to confuse you and take all your money.
On the Barrett Jackson CF1 video, where it sold for like $500,000.
Yeah, yep.
It was like,
boom, sold. It's like, really? Yeah, what? Right. So when you're up there, man, you're just hyped out, right? So we're all just kind of standing there. The auctioneer's right behind us. We can see the crowd and we see the number, and it stalls at $75,000. And I'm like, oh, and she's squeezing my hand. And then they talk about it again, and boom, 85, 100, 110, 120, 130, 170, 180, 200, 220, 240, 280, 285. They go back and forth. 275 hammered it. It shows at 3025 because they put their 10% on it. She squeezed my hand. When it hammered, she's like, and we're all like, holy crap, that just took off. And she gave me the biggest kiss on TV. We're walking off, and she goes, we need to get another one of those.
You're like, we need to go to a hotel room.
I said, I like where you're going with that. So, those are great wins that we've had. And I think that, all of the tough times and all the things that we proved to be able to move through, we're starting to really, really pay off.
How do you keep a great relationship with someone that you're also involved in the business with so much? Because you can't typically agree on everything in 30-something years, right? Like, what's that process of working with your partner and keeping that good?
Love, I think, is what it is. I mean, really, if you didn't have the trust and the love, there's no reason that I mean, why would you waste your time with something, you know? And especially when there's so many things that are riding on it, you know, our house, our families, our, you know, our friends, all of the things that we do. If you didn't have that trust and the belief that you're not always right, you know, she's not always right. Trust me, she's gonna watch this, isn't she? Shit. But I'm not always right, and so by having a little bit of a committee, just the two of us, that is the most important thing. Is make sure that we're both on the same journey. We're both going the same direction, because as soon as you start going different directions, that's when everything just goes stagnant. And we've never had that problem. You know, we've always believed in each other, and you know, held our breath sometimes. You know, just going, okay, is this really how?
Yeah, because you're
you know,
all in. When you're both in the same business,
you got to be
you're all in.
committed. You have to be committed. You have to be committed to what you're doing and who you're doing it with. And I think that you know, Charity and I have that magic, that commitment, that you know, we go into the darkness together. You know, follow me and trust me, and I do the same for her.
These episodes are brought to you from the back of my studio van, which we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, but it really would mean so much to the channel and mean that I can keep improving the guests that you see coming on going forward if you could just hit that subscribe button for me. It's totally free. I know a lot of you are listening to this rather than even watching it, but if you could just pick up your phone, tap that subscribe button, it makes the world of difference. Over 64% of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel, and it would really help me if you could. So thank you. We've also got to touch base on when Bitchin Rides actually came as part of this story and this journey. So you've built some cars for some insane celebrities over the time, but I think it's important to figure out when Bitchin Rides actually started, because I've got a business away from doing the podcast that employs a lot of people, and it's street food and chicken wings. And every time I go into our main unit, I think, my God, we've just got to start filming all of this. The stuff that happens in here, like, I know I'm going to go to prison for a bit, but the stuff that happens in here, we've just got to get it on camera. What was that moment for you, like starting Bitchin Rides and like bringing all those guys into the film?
Well, you know, I already had a great crew. We had been guests on a bunch of other TV shows, My Classic Cars, Car Crazy, Hot Rod Television. We had been on a bunch of different episodes, and so there was a lot of vision of our cars already being guests or on other TV shows. When we sent out a media blitz that we were going to do a GM Futureliner, one of the 12 Parade of Progress buses, it happened across the desk of Bob Scanlon and David Lee, which had also been at Speed Channel, which had started Discovery's Velocity. And they said, okay, we've seen this kid's cars and builds before. What's he doing with a GM Futureliner? And they actually called up and they said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about maybe doing a little series on this, or maybe even a full, you know, TV series on Kindig-It Design, and watch the build of this. And I'm like, sure. So they sent in a company called Fisher Productions, which was out of Park City, and they did a sizzle reel, 6-minute short of kind of showing how the shop is, the layout, the communications between me and the guys and gals. And they said, yeah, we like it. We want to put you under contract. And that was kind of where it all kicked off.
Not atypical, because your show is completely unscripted.
Correct.
And a lot, especially in America, from a Brit's perspective, a lot are scripted. A lot is to produce drama, to bring those moments in. But everything that you guys do is just straight off the bat, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we had no scripts, and it was actually part of my contract. I didn't want to have a bunch of made up stuff. I wanted to build cars and capture, you know, us high-fiving when we win. And so I just told him, I said, you know, be a fly on the wall. You've seen the way that we communicate. We're going to have some fun. And they got us the right producer. Nick Maher is still a great, beautiful man and a wonderful friend, and he knows how to put a story together. So he'd find little snips of things that might be a bigger challenge, or maybe a quirky little thing about the build or whatever. We'd follow that through. So he'd create a story without saying, hey, go do this or do that, because that was, you know, that's just a lot of nonsense to be building a car. You know, we had one of the big experiences for like Hot Rod Television. Absolutely loved the experience doing what we did for Apollo Ohno, the speed skater, the Olympic champion. And we built a 64 Cadillac for him. But when we only filmed for like 2.5 days, the entire build for a half-an-hour episode. That's a lot of film on the floor for building an entire car, right? And I remember the last day of filming at the shop before we went down to Vegas to debut the car, we were on and off, taking parts off of the car, putting it back on, changing camera angles. And it's like, we literally have like 8 hours left before we need to leave to go to Vegas. and we're taking the back wheels back off this car for one more camera angle. And I finally was like, hey, I told the producer, I said, if we take one more thing off of this car, we're not going to make it. We still have to pack and get some sleep and drive 6 hours to Vegas. This is just not going to work, right? We have to go in like literally in less than 24 hours. And so I was like, if you haven't captured it, you're going to just have to make it up. So, and we finally got him convinced that, hey, just let us put the car together. So we finally did it. We made it down there. We did the unveil and whatever. But I learned from that experience that if you just set up some GoPros and do a little voiceover and stuff, and then we can just build the car. We're not going to build it, take it apart, build it, take it apart, change the angles. That's just silly. You know, I'm not a production company for TV. I'm a car production company. I build cars. Capture what we're doing. The magic will be there. Trust me. And Nick's always done a great job of putting those stories together.
Which is amazing that you also can give the trust to do that, because your journey's all been about vision. It's been about drawing, making, producing something. So to actually give that creativity over to somebody else does show that within any business that you've got to actually hand over the parts to the other guys. And a lot of your guys have been there since the start, right?
Yeah.
So who was the first person that was like a major part of taking that business to the next level?
You know, I think Kevin has always been one of the biggest major parts. I mean, he's been there. He and I worked together at HPC.
How did I know you were going to say that?
Well, because so Kevin and I, we have a very great relationship. So the riffraff as we were, I had a custom Volkswagen. I was in the Volkswagen club. He was in the mini truck clubs in Utah. And we'd go to the outdoor park shows and stuff. And the street rodders would be all up front. And they put the riffraff, you know, the Volkswagen and mini truck guys at the back. And so we'd be sitting on a cooler under a tree and just having a great time and hanging out. We got to know each other. He was looking for a job. I was still at HPC at the time, and I got him a job there for about the last 2.5, 3 years that I worked there. And so we just became friends. You know, we were just into it. He was doing the lowering jobs part-time in my garage with me when I first started after I'd given my notice and quit. And it was funny as he had changed his schedule, go in about midday, do a swing shift so that he could do lowering jobs in my garage. Well, one day, about 2 weeks into business he was over there doing a lowering job on an 88 Chevy truck, doing airbags. And I got him to work because his truck was broken down. We were actually doing some stuff on it. And so he got dropped off, finished the job. I take him to work. He's about 15 minutes late. And I dropped him off. I get back on the freeway and my phone rings and it's Kevin. He says, hey man, I got fired. Can you come back and pick me up? I said, yep. I turned around, went back and got him. I was like, he goes, man, I can't believe you fired me. I said, don't worry, man. We got shit to do. That's literally what I said. And 26 years later, here we are.
Which is insane, because imagine if you were both in that truck at that point.
Yeah.
And you could have a little window into the future, seeing what you guys have done with the TV show, seeing the build, some of the people that you've built for. Like, what would you guys have said to each other if you could have seen that in that window?
I can't believe what's coming. That's literally, I think, what we would have said. If we had had any idea where we would be right now, you know, he's amazing. He treats my company as if it's his own. I trust him entirely. He's always just put the business first, which is great. And we've taken good care of him, and he's taken very good care of us. You know, like I say, I can put $3 million of the cars in that rig, and he's from a long family line of truck drivers. He cares about what he's doing. He's very cautious, and he's a professional. He doesn't drink and drive by any stretch ever. And you know, that's one of those things where I trust that, you know, he'll put the vehicles in. They're strapped down perfect. He's takes perfect care of the rig, and he's a workhorse. I mean, the guy just won't stop working. He's awesome. Anybody'd give $1 million for that guy. Don't, but you could. He's just that good.
When you talk about some of the cars that you guys have built together and sold, and you've got the result that you knew was possible, just like that VW, when you bring that right back to what you grew up with and everything that your mother did for you, and then how that transpired into going and working as hard as you could just to cash in like $4,800 that you'd put together, like, what did your mum think about this journey? Like, how does she see it?
Oh, geez, everybody she would talk to, she'd be like, that's my son. Have you watched Bitchin Rides? That's my son.
So she watched every
Oh my
episode.
gosh, if the guy's there to fix the TV or a faucet or something at her house, she's like, do you ever watch TV? That's my son. And it's like, oh my, I'm like, Mom, that's so embarrassing. She was so proud of me. I lost her this year. I lost her at the beginning of the year. And, but she was always, no, that's okay. Thank you. Yeah. She had a wonderful life. And obviously I still wish that she was around, but she was always really secretly I was admired by her, I guess, in the sense that she never would let me be on the phone with her and not tell her how proud she was of me. I'll miss her. She's always with me, but she was always just blown away with what we had done. She couldn't believe it. We had a pretty rough time, with her, her health and some of the life decisions that she had made, being married 3 times and breaking her leg and going on welfare. I mean, we just had a lot of really bad things that had just come down, and it's just, sometimes that stuff happens. And I looked at that going, okay, well, that's that direction. How do people get out of that direction? It almost seemed that not everybody in my life, but there was just a lot of things that people didn't really feel like they could be somebody or do something or get ahead or have a wonderful life. And I was just like, I don't want to do that. There's plenty of examples around me of, just waiting for a government cheese check to show up or some new program that'll make it to where you don't have to worry about stuff, but you actually don't have anything. And I was like, no, I'm going to live what if,
I was about to say,
what if?
The 2 words you kept using this whole podcast, what if, the whole times. Is that what you do with anything, any of those situations, good, bad, negative? You always think, well, but what if it was like this? Because people often just go to the negative straight away in any point of life. But you wouldn't have got to where you are today if you'd have done that, right?
Well, if you focus on the negative all the time, then you basically are surrounding yourself with negative. And if you think, okay, well, this could happen, but what if we go up here? What if we try and land up here? And if I land just below it, that's not so bad. And I've told people, set your goals really high. Everywhere I've ever talked to anybody, set your goals very high. And if you land just below them, it's not so bad. Keep going, and then continue to set those goals. I mean, I think that I've really lived that way. There was a gentleman by the name of Steve Lacy, and I'm not sure if Steve's still around. He was a co-producer of Footloose and a couple other things. He was a mentor to the high school I went to that was inner city in Utah, in Salt Lake, West High. And he told me once, he says, you know what, Dave, surround yourself with pictures and things that you admire the most and the people you admire the most. And one day you'll be admired like those people and have those things. And it didn't make a lot of sense at the time because I'm like going, man, I got like my cousin's borrowed shoes that's what I'm wearing, I mean, it wasn't that bad, but, I just didn't have anything. And I kept keeping that in mind. And then pretty soon I'm like going, I had all these Lamborghinis and Ferraris posters up on my walls and at my house. And I've got those.
Have you got was it an 812 Superfast you ended up with?
No, I got a 458 Italia.
Oh,
and
my favourite. Yeah. I'm very lucky that I have had a 458 as well. Like they are absolutely the best.
Yes, absolutely. And I've drove that thing like I feel dirty the way I've drove it, but I don't care. It's an amazing car. I got one that was 6 years old. I bought an 11. It was 6 years old with 966 miles on it. It was when the 488s came out that everybody started unloading the 458s. And once they got rid of their 458 and got the 488, it wasn't the same. And all of a sudden, so I bought right perfectly and went right through the roof after that. And I'll hang on to that car. I paid cash for it with, get this, with the winnings from the Volkswagen bus auction. I paid off my investment, the $90,000 that I'd spent on the bus. The rest of it went towards a Ferrari. You don't finance your toys. That's another very good lesson. Don't finance your toys.
And when did you learn that?
Right before I bought any toys. I listened to somebody that was smart. Good times come and go. The economy, really, when you work really hard and you've survived going through the up and downs and whatever, we found ourselves get to a point where my clientele, their finances don't float. They don't go up and down that much enough to notice that they weren't
over a big stage of time as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot
at the end to the start.
Exactly. We don't, we do time and materials. Any good builder is going to do time and materials. They give you a ballpark that they think you might land in, but things typically change, in the build. Sometimes they amplify, sometimes they simplify. And so, you don't want to, if you're given a number, then you have to cut corners if you're going to be over budget or else you're going to be in the hole. I don't like investing my money into somebody's car that can afford to pay for the car. And so it's a business contract where you have a time and materials, you have an agreement. We do it very simple, and it's actually, I think it works really well for the client. We work off of a deposit. That money is in an account. As soon as we earn it, every single day we take the time that any of the technicians that worked on the cars. I have 43 employees right now. They write down what they've done, or they've got a log now on their phone because we're pretty technical. These kids these days. So anyway, but anyway, everything is tracked down. We actually do the transfers the next day. As they get close to the end of their deposit, they get an invoice for the parts. They get an invoice for the labor. We ask for another deposit. We continue to work off that. As we get close to the end of the build, then we might turn the tap off. I've been able to just go, okay, well, we're finished. We have too much of your money. I just wire it back to them, you know. But typically, we will just request until we're done the build. They get pictures as we're going along. I keep them involved. I develop colors for them. We do so many things that it just keeps them all like, this is cool.
You said something interesting there, though, which is like about the finances and about different times of life, and it can go up and down. Didn't you have a 4-year wait list to actually get a build into production at the minute?
So for a full build right now, depends on who it is, depends on what I'm doing. Because if I'm really excited about a project, I'll likely bring it in sooner. But typically, if you just call in, hey, I got a 68 Mustang, I just want restored. It's like, yeah, I'm 8 years. 58 million, 8 years behind, and that doesn't include my car company of the CF1s.
So if you're in a position like that, with that much backlog, and you're talking about people, and that's the way that you guys work, do you often find that sometimes on those journeys, a lot can change between the time that someone's like, yep, let's go for it, and the time that you're like, can I have the last check, please? Like, we need to finish this car. Does a lot change sometimes in between that story?
No, you know what, actually, and I think that's part of my job, is to keep the customer interested and excited about the project. You know, if you're just cutting checks for a year, that can be pretty boring. And if you don't see what it looks like, that can be pretty nerve-wracking.
But with that many people on the shop floor, and also that many customers, and then also that many customers waiting at the same time, it's a lot of people. Now, one of my top 3 favorite quotes that I've had since my dad said it when I was younger is, you can only keep some of the people happy some of the time, not all of the people happy all of the time. Right. Is that true, that it's difficult to keep that amount of people happy at once?
As far as employees or clients?
I'd say the whole mix, because sometimes when you're doing one, the others can pull the other way.
No, so, you know, I mean, I think the best way to describe it is that I've had the ability to keep a good relationship with any of the employees. They all have their position. We all stay very busy, and we treat them very well. They all have benefits and all that kind of stuff. But I've also inspired people. When I'm having a conversation with a group of people, you know, whether it's students or whatever at a college, and I have my crew back there, it's like going, hey, you know, set your goals high, dream, go start a business, everything else. And I realize all my employees are behind me. It's like, maybe I should stop having these inspirational talks with my employees around. Yeah. So I've had some of my employees have left, most of which are actually very great friends.
That is a fine balance, that.
It's a terribly fine balance. And the problem is you can't fault them for wanting to do their own thing and to start and go and live the same journey that I did. But at the same time, it sucks when I've inspired them and I don't have them anymore, because we build typically at any given time 16 to 22 cars at a time. And so when you talk about 43 employees, it sounds like a lot of people. When you're building that many vehicles at a time and doing all aspects from body and paint, wiring, metal shaping, systems, all that type of stuff, developing colors, polishing. I mean, we build the entire thing, upholstery, everything is done in one place.
I've seen the fabrication. Yeah. It's insane. I think that's the part that blows my mind the most, to be fair, because when we start messing around with materials when we're younger, typically when we get into metals, it's where it starts to get quite tricky, because you can't mold it, you can't move it very easily just with your hands alone. So you have to learn so many skills to be able to do that. Right.
Well, and that's the thing, is adding to our forte was anytime we were making money, it was like, okay, we can put some more in the bank. But what the bigger ability to make more money is to buy more equipment. You know, CNC machines, working with Stratasys for our 3D printing, Faro 3D scanners, you know, newer GFS paint booths and prep decks and that kind of stuff. And, you know, so as we continued to go, and then the old school metal shaping stuff, you know, we got PAL hammers, we have Polmax, we have English wheels all over the place. I remember the first English wheel, I thought we were the coolest people on the block. You know, you can make a salad bowl in 5 minutes if you learn how to use this thing, you know. And now I've got like 5 of them. I've got shrinkers and stretchers and all these great JS tools and bead rollers, and I mean, you name it. And so It's really exciting to walk into our metal shop or anywhere because now you have the ability to go, okay, well, there's a big panel sitting there. Let's go make something really cool that's got a lot of organic shape, and there's actually guys that know how to use it. So,
and a lot of these builds do end up, as we mentioned earlier, at SEMA because people are going to want to take them somewhere to show their cars off.
Right.
Companies, if they've done a build for the founder, are going to want to take them and show that car off. Have you missed years of SEMA, or is that something that's been really consistent for you?
No, actually, so this year going to SEMA will be, I believe, my 34th or 35th time there.
People treat SEMA as like a pilgrimage. I'm absolutely convinced.
Right?
Like it's that 1 week of the year, like in Vegas, where Vegas just shuts down for something insane.
And there's cars everywhere. Every valet is just got stacked with supercars and hot rods and whatever, and all of the great stuff in the building. Right?
Do you know you've got the main halls, and then you've got the set of stairs up to the left, and that takes you over Skybridge to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at SEMA for 3 days before I realised there was an entire other area, a 30-minute walk away. Like it's just enormous. But like that must be for you after 30 years, like just surrounding yourself with the like-minded individuals for a week, right? Do you feel like your brain can breathe and really look at stuff that you want to incorporate into your next designs?
You know, so they in my industry they don't call it copying, they call it research, and you'll get inspired by things. I don't tend to take a lot of pictures. I tend to just kind of snapshot in my mind, hey, that's kind of cool, whatever, and then I just leave those things in the basket in the back. And when I'm building something or trying to come up with something unique or whatever, I don't hold anything back. If I've got an idea and I'm working on your car, I'm not going to hold it for the next car. If it makes sense to go on yours, I'll come up with something else for the next car. You know, your car, I got this, great idea. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And boom, it's, all of a sudden it's like, wow. And I don't watch trends. I don't really care. I like to look at other people's art, and I look at cars as art. I've always explained it. If you walk into an art gallery and everything's a Michelangelo, there's no Rembrandt, there's no Monet, there's no other things. After a while, you're looking at the same artist's work, constant. It's not that interesting. And I think that that's kind of the beauty of our industry and the flavor of life is to have things that are unique and different takes and different aspects. So where I really appreciate somebody's work on a modern exotic car that they've done some modifications to versus a mini truck or a sport truck or a classic truck or, a Volkswagen or some sport compact. I think that I always say there's an ass for every seat. And when you appreciate what they've done with that vehicle, you can see what their passion was and what their take was and stuff. And it gives that unique personality to that vehicle and to that person. And they don't all have to be the same. I just go with what I feel. I don't watch what if they're all doing matte finishes on the inside of an engine bay, that doesn't mean I have to do it. Right.
So does that annoy you when because with millions of people watching, you're going to go up to the bar and be recognized. You're going to go up to the counter at a store and be recognized. Does it annoy you if people were to be like, oh, so you're in competition with Chip Ride and these other guys? Like, how did you get the build? Because I've even seen like the hypercar designers I'm obsessed with, like Christian von Koenigsegg and Horatio Pagani, talk about how like, no, our customers have both. Yeah. Like, and that's like your version of theirs, and that's for every seat, right?
I'm sure somewhere one of my collectors has got a Chip Foose car and they have a Kindig car. And like I said, Chip has always been such a great inspiration to me. I've always watched and admired what he's done. And as I said, it's funny is way back when he was working for Boyd, he wasn't the same Chip Foose that everybody recognizes now from Chip Foose's, work that he's done on his own. But he was still a big deal. I remember being at the Pleasanton Good Guys show and in Pleasanton, California, way back before I started my business, right before I'd left. And I had my car, my station wagon was in Colorado Customs wheel booth outside. And I was working inside at HPC's booth. So we drove one of my buddies from HPC and I drove to California in my car, cleaned it up, put it in their booth. We'd drive it back and forth to to the hotel. And I remember getting on the freeway, leaving the show one night, and Chip pulls up behind or by me in a BMW, I think it was a 850 or something like that. The lift up, bigger body, hard top BMW back in the era in the mid 90s. And he stopped and he gives me a thumbs up and I'm like, that was Chip. That's cool. Look at that car, wow. But it wasn't the same, like, holy crap, it's Chip Foose, that he is now. And, but he's always just been just a The great guy doesn't turn his nose up at other people that do the same thing. I don't look at him as competition in the sense that he builds one of the most amazing cars. There's no doubt about it. But I don't look at anybody, whether it's Chip or Troy or Jesse Greening or anybody that's in the industry and go, oh, I don't think I can ever beat them. I don't care. Being there and doing my job and having a great build and
doing what you're passionate
the camaraderie with my family of workers that built the car with me, the high five from the customer I built it for. And you know what? I'd rather sit at a bar with other builders and other designers and stuff and just have a beer and just talk shop, because we all get to live the same thing. We can't build them all, ourselves. They have to get kind of spread out.
Have you had that chance?
I've had that chance quite a few times. Oh, yeah. Well, actually just not very long ago, Chip and I and Joe Martin were in New York together at a car show. And Chip got in there pretty late and he goes, hey, are you guys still hanging out? And I said, yeah, we're at the bar. There's a big wedding. I went to the wrong bar on the top of the building instead of the one in the lobby I didn't see off to the side. And he got in at like 11:30. He goes, save me a spot. And so he came down, had a beer with us, and we just sat there chit-chatting. I brought a good friend of mine, Anthony, one of my best friends, and just to be part of my entourage. My wife was taking the weekend off because we have a granddaughter, and which is so much fun. And anyway, we were sitting there, and it was funny as Anthony's taking a couple pictures, kind of candidly, and he's like, can't believe I'm sitting in a bar in New York with Chip Foose and Dave Kindig sitting there chit-chatting about cars and stuff. And I'm like going, I guess really, if you think about it that way, I can't believe I'm sitting here with Chip Foose either. And of course, one of my best friends.
You've got to learn to appreciate those moments and everything you've done, because there's a lot of life.
Yeah.
There's a lot. We spend a lot of it driving, a lot of it on our phones, a lot of it looking at the finances to buy a new machine, a lot of it worrying, a lot of it battling people. But like, those are really those little moments that we live for, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think for you, another moment that you've lived for would have been the CF, because that car is just breathtaking. It's the one that I spoke about earlier, setting over $500,000 at that auction when you made, it was a one-off, wasn't it, for the auctioneer
Yeah, so that was a number 8 CF1. It was done black with red interior, and it had the Barrett Jackson logos on the valve covers, on the identification tag on the front of the cowl. We'd put basically a CF1 logo, and it says who the car was built for and what serial number it is. And we had that great opportunity. They've actually sold for more than that. So another one sold at 605. That was number 4, which was a week after Kissimmee, Florida. Number 5 sold for 770,000.
Do you always auction them? Or
no. Actually, it's funny is So that one that I'd done for Barrett Jackson, number 8, was actually a spec build for that particular auction. All of the other ones are always built with customers, money.
And did you think that one was going to achieve that at that auction?
I thought it actually had gone more, to be honest with you. So it is what it is. That's the thing about an auction, is you can't ever go, well, I think my car was worth more than that. It's like, well, you shouldn't have put it in an auction if you didn't think you were going to get at least what you had. And if I always just go in, like I say, I go in with confidence going, I think that the car is going to do just fine, and we're not going to worry about it if it doesn't. It is what it is. You're putting it in the hands of the auction gods, in the sense, whether it's, whoever's auction it is. It's up to who's in the audience. If you built something that people would desire or want to have, and then hopefully, all of the stuff that you threw at the wall sticks.
Has there ever been a moment where you've wanted to stop, where it's all like you've had a moment where it's grounded you back, a little bit like the investor situation? It could be the investor situation, that you thought, like, I'm not sure we can do this anymore. Has there ever been that along 11 seasons and all these years of doing it?
No.
Do you think there ever will be a moment that will make you want to stop, or do you think you'll do this to the day?
No, I mean, I really can't see anything like that. A lot of obviously changed since COVID. I think everybody's industry across the board, whether it's workers, finances, that kind of stuff. I think a lot of things changed. We didn't. We stayed busy the entire time during COVID, and since then it's been a little bit different, because there's a little bit of a different mentality for workforce. It's really, really hard, and you can ask any builder. I'm sure you've heard it before. It's very difficult to find craftsmen. Somebody to come in and actually want to do that job, and it's like going, it can be hard work. It can be dirty work and whatever. But if you're doing a great job, it's a great living, and it's a lot of fun to go and create something. You're basically working as a professional artist. The way I look at it, I don't look at it as I need a body panel man. I need an artist. There's plenty of panel beating jobs out there. This is something that you
So
come
do
in and
you
you do your
start with an
craft.
artist and make them into a panel crafter rather than start
No,
with
I
a panel
don't,
crafter and make
because
them into an artist?
no, that's the problem is I don't have the time. I have it in my heart to try and inspire people to get better at what they're doing, but we don't have the time. That's the problem is we're so backlogged and we're so busy that it makes it very difficult to bring in people to bring up in the skill. If they have skills, certainly I'll give them a job and then we'll add to those skills. But bringing somebody in as like an apprentice it's never worked for me in 26 years. It's just I'm the apprentice. I bring the professionals in to teach me how to do this stuff.
You always have talked about the next thing though. It's always been the next thing, like getting the show or getting the new equipment in the shop, getting the new vehicle, doing the next car is going to be the favorite one. It's like, what is the next big move for the business in the next 5 years and everything that you do? Is there something that you're yet to do that you've got your eyes on? You're like, we've got to do this.
Well, just recently, the CF1 really is one of our biggest, I think, successes as a company because we were already doing really well with the custom stuff. But developing a program to design and build a custom car that is basically, we build all the parts for the car. There's only 4 pieces that actually fit an original 53 Corvette. The grille surround, the glove box door, the bezel around the passenger side of the dash, and the bezel around the glove box or the Speedo. That's it. Everything else is custom built on that car. All the sand casting for the windshields, the trim, the sides are parts that we have manufactured. The wheels are all one-off. The headlights are literally 3D printed, chromed. We machine the lenses. We sand cast the rings. We assemble all those. It's really, we are building truly a production turnkey vehicle. I've become a licensed manufacturer from the National Highway Travel Safety Board, so I'm actually generating 17-digit numbers as a replica of the 53 Corvette. It plays off of that anyway. And it's a Kindig CF1 Roadster Cabriolet. We're debuting this year at the SEMA show. The Fastbacks, which all carbon fiber. The bodies are made up in Tacoma, Washington with our molds. By Doug Graff, which was CRC Corvettes. And next year, second quarter, we're going to try and start working on the Nomad wagon version. So there'll be a 4th body style.
This is where it begins.
This is where it's at. I mean, I've sold 31 of those cars so far, and that's great. I'm actually, you got Ford, Chevy, DeLorean, Kindig. I always throw the DeLorean thing in there because I just think it's funny. But that's kind of really been a dream come true. Is now I'm actually a car designer and a manufacturer, which is different. You think of Koenigsegg or any of those guys that have had that vision and wanted to do that. Yeah. They've gone and done it.
How many years was that in your mind to want to do that before it was executed? Was that always part of the vision for what you were doing?
Well, I always wanted to be a designer for one of the big manufacturers. And I remember when I was a kid, I drew a side view, what almost looks like a XJ220 of a vehicle. But I had this idea of putting the scoops underneath the car, and my grandmother thought that was a great idea. And so she packaged up a copy of it from the library copying machine and sent it to Chrysler, to Lee Iacocca back in the day. I'm very young. I was very young at this time. So those things of going, wow, you can do whatever you want. Those things also came into play a lot with my grandmother, just going, you can do anything you want. And I'm like going, well, no, because there's not a program for that yet, But there was just a lot of things in my life that I always thought, well, wouldn't that be cool if I did have a car company one day? You just dream of those things. I remember the first time when I first moved into my building 26 years ago, I had one of the 4,500 square foot suites. We'd outgrow my garage in 2.5 months. Moved into this 4,500 square foot suite. And I remember just standing there one day, I think it was after work, I'm having a beer. I look out, there's one suite to this side and 4 more that way. And I was like, man, wouldn't that be cool if I had this whole building one day just filled with cars? And I'm like, oh, that's silly. That would never happen. A couple years later, I'd outgrown the 4,500 square feet. I called up the guy that I'd signed a 5-year lease with, the landlord, and I said, hey, the other end of the building is open. It's double the square footage. Can I cancel this lease and sign a new 5-year lease and move into the double square foot? He goes, yeah, because that's obviously smart for him. So we did. That was actually Missy Marlowe's gymnasium training center for the Olympics. And so we built our showroom and we did all this stuff. We put in a paint booth and, we moved our paint booth rather. Fast forward, about 4 years later, I'd already outgrown again. I called up and I said, hey, the 2 center ones are actually open. Do you care if we cut this wall out? We'll support it. We'll get, do all this stuff. And I said, I'll take over another 9,000 square feet. And he says, yeah. So I signed another lease expanded. And at that time, I seen the growth and I seen the potential, and we started getting busier and busier. And about 3-4 years later, the end of the building came open, and I was like, "Hey, can I just lease the whole building?" He goes, "Yeah." So we leased the whole building, filled it up, 27,000 square feet, and it's like, holy crap! Literally, if we went to the very west side of the building, start digging right now, within 3 days, I bet we could probably be underneath the cooler for the beer at the 7-Eleven at the end of the building. I was like, let's do it. So anyway, yeah, we took that over, and in that time, we had become really good friends with the gentleman that owned the building, and that building and 2 others. At the time of his death, he was pretty old. Kindig-It, great guy. He owns the Mazda dealership and Infinity and so forth. And basically, we had set up that when he passes away, that we would buy the building. We had a great price put together for purchasing it from him, and we're like, this is what we're gonna do. Charity and I's house got broken into for the 3rd time that we'd been in for 23 years. The smallest, crappiest house on the block that I had doubled the square footage myself. I had built the addition. I'd built a 4-car garage in the back, and all this stuff was going on. We had saved up money to buy the building, and Klein still was around. I was like, you know what? Let's go and buy us a house. Let's buy us our dream home. And we looked and looked and looked. We found it. We bought it, and literally 3 months after we bought it, Klein passes away.
It's like, come on,
like,
dude,
oh.
timing and all that.
But we had such a good rapport with him and his accountant and stuff that they were cool. We worked through getting the loans and putting everything together, coming up with some more money for the down payment, and we bought the building. The guy that we bought it from, Klein, it was pretty cool. Is those buildings were to be sold to donate all of the money to Weston, Idaho, where he grew up, a very small town, for college scholarships. So it was pretty cool, the fact that he had already given all the dealerships and properties and stuff to his kids, and basically this was the last things. And so that went to help a lot of kids hopefully go do something and dream big or whatever. More importantly, we were able to get the building, and that was in 2015 that we bought the building. That's when things really started to change, because now my overhead just dropped and we're building equity in the building. We outgrew the building again by 2018. So there was another 10,000 square foot building about 3 blocks north in a little bit different city, but it was just literally through the neighborhood. We're boom at another 10,000 square feet. That's where we'd keep our rig, and I put a bunch of my cars and clients' cars waiting to get in, back stock of our T-shirts and tool bags and detail kits and that kind of stuff. So it was kind of cool.
I think your story, Dave, is the epitome of what if. Like, what if you ever go? What if you quit that job? What if you do the next thing? So thank you so much for spending the time to tell me about it in the back of my very strange van here in the random hotel car park in the middle of Luton. But we've been at the Petrol Hedonism show, Chiro Champi, Petrol Hedonism Live. How have you found that? It's
been awesome. I'll tell you what, this is the first time I've actually been to England, and I have had a wonderful time. The people here are so warm and friendly. I've had a great time and actually taken a little bit of a vacation. I brought my lovely wife, Charity. I've got my son, Drew, his wife, Kara, my granddaughter, and I also brought my father-in-law. So
you got the whole gang.
Got the whole gang, and we're going to hang out. And yeah.
Well, when I head over to the US next in our US van studio, I'll make sure that we stop on by on our tour, get the doors open with the cars in the background in your facility, and catch up once again. So Dave, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you in the future again soon.
Same here.